Welcome back to 1834 Restoration House.
Fall is finally descending on South Carolina and it's cooling off, but that doesn't mean that it's going to stay cool. Next week it could end up being back in the 80s or 90s again. The weather here is just that way. Before we dive into this week's restoration topic, I'd like to bring you back out to the great magnolia tree. Now, some time ago we talked about the fact that the magnolia tree puts on seeds, and we talked about maybe making seeds available to you guys so that you could grow a great magnolia tree on your property if you have the room to do so. So today is the day where it's time to start harvesting.
Today's program is sponsored by the generous support of our patrons. Your support helps to further our historic preservation efforts. For more information, visit patreon.com/1834 Restoration House.
We have a bunch of squirrels up in here and they're ready to take the seeds away from us if we don't take them. So I'm going to go ahead and start pulling these out. So this is a magnolia seed pod right here. Take a look at that. See those beautiful red seeds? Now inside that beautiful red cover is the actual seed itself. This is just a protective coating. So we're going to harvest as many of these as we can. We've picked every mature seed pod that we could reach. This is my secret weapon for getting the ones that we can't. That's what the squirrels do. They'll chew on it, the thing falls to the ground, and then they come down and gather the seeds. So we did lose a few from the impact, but it's not too bad. We still have several. And it looks like our third seed pod has disappeared, so we'll just let the squirrels have that one. But look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Oh, almost.
Look at that. We got quite a few.
We have lots of seeds here. We're going to need a couple of weeks to process all of these and get them to where they can be packaged. But in a few weeks, when they're ready, we'll make an announcement and you can go to a website and order these if you'd like to have some for your own property. But we didn't come here today to talk about magnolia trees. Instead, we're all about restoration. So when we left last time, we were in the middle of trying to soak this latch hardware here, and apparently I got busy and walked away and never got back to it. So it's been sitting in the tank here for about, maybe a week, I think. Having had a week sitting in the alcohol, it's making a big difference. A lot of this paint was stuck on and now it's coming off. I've switched to a utility knife blade here because these are disposable and they seem to work pretty well. I'm just very gently just rubbing this, grabbing the paint and peeling it off. Going super gentle here so it doesn't scratch the metal. And then I can come back with a Scotch-Brite and just clean that up. It's time to put some shellac on this door. First thing I'm going to do is take a rag, soak it with denatured alcohol, and start wiping the door down just to pick up any loose dirt or any debris that happens to be on it. See, it is picking up stuff. We just want to have a clean surface because the shellac will trap anything that you leave behind. Last week I took a small can of clear shellac and I put some trans tint into this to change it to a darker color. So right now we're going to go ahead and prepare, and this is the secret sauce right here. This is denatured alcohol. I know we talk about it a lot, but I'm just going to pour some into a jar. Then I'll take my shellac and get it opened up. In case the pigment settled down, I'm just going to go ahead and stir it up a little bit. That is looking good. I have my jar of denatured alcohol, just a little bit. Now, I'll take some shellac and just pour it in. So now I have a mixture of shellac and denatured alcohol. So what's going to happen is I'll put this on here, and you're not going to see a huge color change all at once, but as we build up the coats, we'll not only get a smoother surface, but we'll get a deeper and darker tone each time we put it on. The reason that I dilute my shellac is because it tends to come out of the can a little bit sticky, and it doesn't really flow out and give you a smooth surface. So by adding the denatured alcohol, it allows it, because it's so wet, to flow out completely flat. Gives us a smoother surface, and then the alcohol, which is a solvent, will completely evaporate and leave behind 100% shellac. I'm laying on my first coat of shellac, and I'm making sure that I brush my wet shellac into the area that I've already touched. Having used shellac for a number of years, I can tell you that the first coat is not going to look good. The second coat's not going to look good. Maybe not even the third or the fourth. It's not until you pass the fourth coat that things start to look good. And that's just the way it is. But once you get done, you'll be amazed. So again, I'm brushing it back into the wet coat. And that way it becomes one coat with no lines. And this stuff is incredibly wet. It's not like varnish or urethane or any of those others. It's nice and wet, flows out beautifully. And when it dries, the surface will probably be just as flat and dull as it was when I started. A little bit of shellac really goes a long way, especially when it's diluted like this. But you should expect to see multiple coats. Now see, I just kind of made a mistake there and slopped it, so I'm trying to blend it back. Does this require an expensive paintbrush? No, it really doesn't. I'm just using just a plain old cheap throwaway brush, and it works just fine. If I need to stop for any reason, I can put this into a can or a jar of denatured alcohol, and the brush will stay supple and ready for when I'm ready to get back to it again. Now I had a little bit of shellac just kind of try to puddle up there, so I'm bringing it on around and distributing it out because I want my coat to be nice and thin. Oh, did you see that? I accidentally splattered it. Can I fix it? Yes. If I have to, I can get it wet and do it again, just like that. All those splatters are gone now. As I was working, I noticed that some of the white lines where the paint got under between the wood sections, the shellac was darkening those up and making them less visible. We've talked about shellac before on this channel, and we absolutely love it. It's so easy to work with. The results are so good, and it's pretty economical too, and there is no nasty chemicals to deal with. But best of all, if you ever want to take this off down the road, you can take it off with denatured alcohol and a rag. So again, I'm just pulling it back into the already wet shellac. Blend it out just like that. Now, doesn't that look great? Something else I wanted to mention too, and that is that whenever you're applying anything to wood, be it shellac or even paint, that you should always brush in the same direction as the wood grain. Don't go across it like this. Go with the grain, and you'll have nice, smooth results.
Wow, you can really tell a difference. This part you haven't done and this part you have. Looks really good. Mm-hmm. I really like it.
It's starting to come together.
Yes.
But we're nowhere near done yet. We still have several more coats, and as we go through this, it's going to continue to get darker and more mature like that door over there. I see a spot here where there's a ring.
Oh, I see that.
So I think I must have dribbled some on there. I want to show you how easy it is to fix that. I just get my brush wet, but not sopping wet, and I just come back on it like that, and then I just blend wide like that. Now it's completely gone. Shellac, especially if you add denatured alcohol to it, will flash off so quickly it'll make your head spin. Literally, the vapors come up into the air and they fill the room, so you want to make sure you have fresh air. But just to illustrate my point about the fast, I was just here, not, 5 minutes ago? It's completely bone dry. And I was just here, I don't know, maybe a minute ago. It's tacky, so a minute or two from now it'll be completely dry. I can touch it and none of it gets on my hands. Only a couple of minutes have elapsed since we last talked to you. This thing is absolutely bone dry. So I'm going to take this jar. I put just a little bit of denatured alcohol in there just to keep the brush wet. If this thing dries out, you might as well throw it away. But put it in some alcohol and it stays nice and moist. Okay, so I'm going to add just a touch more of the alcohol. I'm turning the can around so the spout is on top so it doesn't splatter too much. Okay, I got a little bit there, not much. And let's get some shellac in there. Okay, so I put a good proportion of shellac in there this time compared to the alcohol. Mix it up. And now let's go on and start with coat number 2. This coat is noticeably darker than the last one. That's partially because of the buildup, but also because I have a higher proportion of tinted shellac to the alcohol. And so it's not quite as diluted as it was before. It also feels a little stickier than it was. When it's really thin, it's just like water almost. I don't tend to recommend straight shellac because it can be too sticky.
This is looking beautiful. Now, if we had not tinted the shellac, it would just be very blonde with a slight sheer shininess, just a little bit. But since we tinted it, we're kind of like artificially aging it, and I think it's looking really good. You can see the other door over there, which is our goal, is to try and get it similar to that. And with the red tones, it's looking really good. I think it's going to be a perfect match. I'm so excited.
I'm preparing to put on coat number 3, and I wanted to mention that what I've been doing is with each coat I have more shellac and less alcohol, and so the proportion gets heavier and heavier. So let's see what happens here. As expected, it is darkening up. as the proportion of shellac gets a little bit higher, it gets a little bit thicker, so it's more important to pay attention to blending. It's not quite as forgiving as it was on the first coat. We also need to do what we're going to do and then get out of it. I can already feel the difference. There's less alcohol in there, so it tends to dry a whole lot faster than it did last time. Let's see, I think I'll come over here. And what happens is it starts to feel sticky. So we want to get in there, lay it down, and get out. Okay, each coat gets a little bit deeper, a little bit darker. It takes a little longer for each coat to dry because the alcohol goes down into the coat below it, and then it has to come back out and evaporate. All right, so I've gotten all of the wells done. Now it's time to do the stiles. See how that tone just deepens up? Here are the results of 3 coats of tinted shellac. Now, there are no hard, fast rules about this. We just go until it looks right. So 3 coats, and it's finally starting to build up into where the color tone is staying put. I noticed with the first 2 coats that it looked good, and then it dried, and some of the color just kind of disappeared. So here at the 3rd coat, it seems like it may be holding. To my eyes here, it's getting awfully close to that. Although this does look a little bit fresher and newer. Now, these doors were built probably around 1900, possibly the late 1800s, because this house was built in 1900. They may have been sitting in a factory for a year or 2, who knows. But these doors have saw marks, they have tool marks. They were not super high polish, high-end doors like you might find in a super luxurious Victorian house. Ours was a Victorian, maybe a little more modest means. And so we're trying to maintain that look, and so we haven't sanded the doors at all. Now, it could be tempting to take a door like this after it's stripped, sand it down, make it absolutely perfect. But those saw marks add character to the doors, and we wanted to maintain that and respect the house's history.
Meanwhile, I have been working on the baseboards and trying to get them all cleaned up. And there's little bits of paint. I haven't done this one yet, you can see. I'm still working on this one. There's little bits of spots here and there. I'm using the scraper, the denatured alcohol, and the Scotch-Brite. Slowly but surely getting it there. It's gonna look great.
We put the door up here against the other one just to see how they compare. Now remember, 3 coats of tinted shellac is way darker than 3 coats of untinted shellac would be. If we hadn't tinted it, this thing would be absolutely blonde, right? So we've got a lot of coloration going on here with 3 coats. I suspect that another coat or 2 would definitely darken this up and maybe get it more on par with this one here. What I do want to be careful of though is that I don't build up too much of a shine. So shellac, if allowed to build up too much, will become super shiny. And we don't want the door to look like it's French polished, seriously. We want it to look more like it's old wood. I think we've achieved that for the most part here because this does look like a very old door. It is a very old door, but we want it to look like a very old door, not something that's just brand new. I want it to look like it's been here a while. Here it is after 4 coats of shellac. The thing is looking great, and we're going to let this thing dry overnight and see how it looks, but I think it's going to be really good. We won't rehang this right away because we still have some more stripping to do over there on the door frames, and then once we get that clear and then shellacked, then we can rehang the door and everything will be back as it should be. But I'm thinking this is looking really good. Now over time, the sunlight coming in this room will tend to darken this and make it look more mature. But what we're after is the look of a door that's always been here and always been this way. We weren't sure if this experiment would work, but we all did it together. We all learned together, and the answer is yes. Yes, it did.
I love it. I think we could not have done better. It really came really close to the same door over there. That it just works beautifully. Well, thank you for watching 1834 Restoration House.